welcome.
Roberto Gazzi.
We have a bunch of attorneys here today. I feel
well, the thing is, we can't go to court anymore because they shut down all the courts. But anyway, that's this.
Italy reopened. Italy has tell us.
Tell us what's going on in Rome, Roberto.
Well, this week has been basically fine. No major accident, no major problems. Most of the people which was complaining about the fact that we were basically on home arrest are now complaining that there's too much people around. There's been let's call it an accident where in Milan, which is basically the region where they had suffered the most deaths most deaths and ill patients. There's been, let's say, an accident where basically everybody went to one of those places where they usually hang around on the weekends, the so-called Movida, which is more or less the name for elderly people, which elderly people describes where younger people hangs out. And so there's been 3-4 days of big discussion that while we are going back to lockdown because people they can behave and like that. For the rest, it's Italy like it was like before the coronavirus era. The only thing we still have is queuing, which is against our DNA, and people complaining that the economy is going bad.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And now that it's not, now that the scare has gone, people are starting to complaining that we don't have to. That's the other. That's one of the main things. I mean, this is one. Actually, it's kind of strange what football or soccer, as you call it, on the other side of the world, it is basically the fourth biggest industry in Italy. The turnaround of football is around 18 billion euros in Italy.
Right.
So, although people that complain for other reasons, there is a lot of people which has problems now. It's not only about the football players; it's also about the staff, the people working at premises, at stadiums, outside from the stadium. So, and actually, I since I'm a football junkie, I really do need a real football game, which is not something e-sport or something.
Yeah, well, it's hard to watch sports. I think right now we're seeing sports in South Korea. They're showing baseball in South Korea over here because they have no sports. Now, you could watch marble racing, which we just saw.
Now, I'm going to show another race now that I've found
okay, do you have it?
Came up on this,
right,
so give me a second. And I will show you the one this one is for Tom.
Oh, right.
Let's see if I can.
You got to be able to share the screen.
Yes, I can.
Here we go.
Oh, yeah. I've watched this. This is fascinating. Off to the races.
Yes. Takes third place.
We're competing with the Italians.
We can't have this. We must be number one. There we go. What happened?
It needs to be updated.
So anyway, but as you can see, we
It needs
ran.
to be updated. We surpassed everybody. Come on, man. We
did.
passed Italy and everybody.
That's a cut
That's
short
cool.
version. But
What are the most common symptoms of COVID? Fever, cough, shortness of breath. It's also common to have body aches.
oh my,
But COVID-19 is
we
still
need to
running.
get Mark on the show. We need to get this guy on the show. But anyway, yeah. I thought I set that off. Sorry, guys.
No, that's all right. That is pretty cool. But the thing is, it
I'm
doesn't.
running my own dashboard. I'm directed to do. That's hard to do.
75,000. We're like 1,300,000. Hello. I mean, we took off like a rocket.
Well,
But
we
because you are testing. I mean, it's again. I said it last week. There are that's the numbers you have. It's fun. I mean, it's fun. It's interesting, but it has no real touch with reality.
Mhm.
In Italy, they're not testing.
Oh, they're not.
testing anymore.
Yeah.
Belgium has never publicly denounced the number of deaths and the number of
Right.
COVID patients. Boris Johnson says that in England they have tested 100,000 patients, and I mean in Spain they just decided not to keep the number.
So that's one way to stop coronavirus is you just don't test for it.
Yeah,
Right.
and I mean, since now we now know that the virus was already circulating in Europe and also in the US way before actually in Italy there's somebody who's been declared, or who they basically found out that this lady had coronavirus in December.
Mhm.
So I mean, and we actually the number of deaths we have. We have deaths. We have a difference in our statistics, which is deaths with coronavirus or deaths because of coronavirus.
Mhm.
And
Right.
but the number we have basically published, which is communicated every day,
Right.
even day, doesn't make any difference. The deaths which are associated with coronavirus.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, but Italy also has a very senior population. In other words, it's one of the oldest populations in Europe, from what I understand. So part of the demographics we read is that
I think we and Japan are the oldest countries in the world.
right, and I don't know why that is. Okay, but you guys have.
I mean, there's an area in Sardinia
Mhm.
on the island where the average is around 85 or something like that.
Yeah.
And
So
there's more citizens with 100 years than in every other part of the world.
yeah.
Basically, I think it's the wine, and the weather of Sardinia. So
Yeah.
it maybe it has something to do with what we.
Oh well, yeah. They have good food, good wine, so everybody goes to Italy, and you have an older population. Well, Jim has just joined us. Jim, where are you from?
In Jupiter, Florida. In South Florida, we're about 100 miles north of Miami.
Oh, sure. I know where Jupiter is. Yes, of course. Yeah, I think there's a guy, Tiger Woods, who likes to place there. Something like that, doesn't he? Tiger Woods, Angelo Shirilli.
Yes, Tiger Woods is here.
Really? Okay. So what do you do in Jupiter?
I'm in the mortgage business.
Mortgage business. Okay, we were just talking about that. I don't know if you know Kim. She's in Raleigh. Tom
long
is
time ago. We've known
Long
each
time
other
ago.
since.
Tom is in North Carolina. Roberto
You were
is
from
in
North Carolina.
Roberto's in Rome, and Reina is in Malaysia, and I'm actually in the Raleigh Durham area also. So what's going on in the mortgage industry due to this coronavirus?
Oh, it's been some interesting times.
Like?
You have a situation where we have record interest rates, where rates have been great from an origination perspective, but then you also are having to deal with the situation of all those that are dealing with COVID and the forbearance issues that has brought about. We've got roughly 7% of mortgages that are currently in forbearance, which means it's people that are taking a delay in making their mortgage payments, which causes stress on mortgage servicers, because even though the government has told people that they don't have to make their mortgage payment, the servicing companies still have to make payments to the bondholders, and it's creating a bit of a cash delay.
Yeah, Tom was just telling me that, Tom, you were just telling me something about the mortgage industry and the real estate industry, weren't you, about it not being too good between now and the end of the year?
Well, just as Jim was saying, the servicing companies are having a difficult time because, the federal government has said that the mortgage companies have to allow the forbearance, but the folks that are servicing the loans, they still have to make their payments. So, I'd be real interested to see how that, if it goes on for too long, Jim, don't you see some very serious impact to the mortgage business?
Oh, it could be an absolute crisis where, the situation alone of the government has said that they will pick up after 4 months of payments, but that's a lot of money that servicers have to come up with. And, once you start extending past 4 months, it becomes problematic. But the government up to this point has guaranteed that they will start helping with making those payments. And we'll have to see how that plays out. I mean, the way it started off was that mortgage borrowers had the opportunity to go into a 90-day forbearance. We'll have to see how quickly we actually come out of this as to what it's going to do for us. But the longer that it extends beyond that, the more problematic it becomes. If you enter into a forbearance agreement at the end of 90 days or just prior to the end of 90 days, you have the opportunity to re-up for another 90 days, and you can continue this out for a period of up to 12 months. So the longer that it plays, we'll have to see. But during this time, mortgage servicing companies are going to continue to have to pay the insurance that's due on the properties, the property taxes when those become due on the properties. So it's not just the principal and interest payments that have to be returned to the bondholders that we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a whole cash flow cycle that is not going to happen because of this, right?
Right. Well, because not all servicing companies are banks. They don't have deposits in which to rely on that they can draw from in order to make these payments. So we'll just have to see how, what they can do. There's been a lot of talk with the Fed and Mark Calabria as to what can be done, and they're now starting to react in a way that is positive to the mortgage business, where before there was a lot of concern about how deeply they were going to step in to help resolve the situation. Because the other thing you also have to consider, it's not just the people that have had issues that we're looking at, but it's the people that say, oh, well, now I have an opportunity to not make a mortgage payment just because I could say I've been impacted by COVID. All you have to do is reach out to your servicing company. They're not testing to see if you have any issues. They're not testing to see if you're currently facing financial hardship. If you want to take a 90-day vacation on your payment, you can do so. But the other thing that they're not being told is that once you enter into forbearance, you don't know how it's going to be at the end of this period. You don't know whether or not you're actually going to be able to tack the payments onto the end. As somebody have said, in many situations, the servicer can say, no, we want the money back in the next 12 months, the next 24 months. And if you actually have had a problem making your payment, how are you going to make a payment that's going to be higher than where you're currently at? Are we going to look at a modification situation? There's just a lot of unknowns that people haven't given a lot of thought to, particularly when you're just trying to enter into this. If you have a problem, it's one thing, but if you don't have a problem, you should just continue to make your payment.
Oh, I agree. I don't know why people are taking advantage of this.
Will it affect your credit if you decide, hey, I'm just not going to make a payment?
It absolutely can affect their payment or their credit.
Really? Okay.
What you hear is it won't, but we've already seen instances where once somebody does enter into forbearance, it is impacting their credit in a negative aspect. You even have people that are calling it just inquiring about forbearance that are automatically being put into forbearance, whether or not they've requested it or not.
Wow.
There have been situations where people have been just messing around on the website, clicking for information. Next thing you know, they're dumped into forbearance. They don't even find out until they go to, we've had people that have actually gone to apply for a refinance transaction and have been told that they can't get their mortgage refinanced because now they're in forbearance.
Right. What are mortgage rates right now? Let's say I want to go out and buy a house. What are the mortgage rates looking at right now?
Interest rates on a conventional basis, if you're putting 20% down and you've got good credit, you're probably going to be looking at rates that are going to be in the threes to mid threes. On a 15-year basis, you could potentially fall down below 3%. Rates are still pretty attractive.
Whoa. So it would be a good time to go out and buy some homes then?
Oh, it's a great time to go out and buy.
Nick already did.
Yeah, but see, I don't have a mortgage. That's my problem.
Well, actually, my wife and I closed on a mortgage April the 1st on a home. So
Really? Yeah. See, the thing is that's the real problem is I don't have a mortgage on my home. So the thing is, maybe I should go buy some homes, but I don't know what I would do with them. I guess
investment property is a great thing.
right. Yeah, maybe, but that's a lot of work. 4-letter word. I try to avoid that one. Okay,
Nick,
so
Nick, I have a property. I'll sell you.
We're surrounded by lawyers.
yeah, but see the problem, Tom, is that then you have renters, and you got to deal with. You have to be a landlord. I've done all that stuff before. You know,
Yeah.
that's a
Jim,
lot.
aren't renters asking for forbearance as well?
Yes.
You do have that happening. Yes.
Really?
And that's putting the mortgage owners into jeopardy now. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Wow. Okay.
So,
See,
I mean, if one person does it, then it stacks. So there needs to be a better plan put into place for something like this. Because
so Jim, this is Economics Monday at IBM TV. Are we going to fall into a depression or recession? What are your thoughts?
I think it's certainly possible that we could fall into a recession. I don't know that we're going to go into a depression, but the biggest question that we have and that everyone's looking for the answer to is when are we going to have either a vaccine or when are we going to have a treatment? And when we get either one of those, I think we're going to see that recovery will happen obviously absolutely quicker rather than later. But with the unknown of when either of those are going to occur, it's hard to tell just how far out this is going to go. But we've never seen a situation where you take a look at what's been impacted by the price of oil, jobless rates of over 20 million people, over 7% of the people that are currently not making a mortgage payment. It will continue to roll upon itself. How quickly it unwinds, it's hard to say. I think I'm probably more inclined to think it's going to be a sharp U as opposed to a V recovery, just based upon what I'm reading and people that I'm talking to. But the timing of which, it's just hard to say.
Oh yeah, so it's all a matter of timing.
for some of the viewers out there, because sometimes I get hit with, we're talking over their head a little bit, and part of what Nick and I try to do is inspire financial literacy and understanding.
Yeah, you got to explain forbearance.
Can you explain the difference between a sharp U versus the V?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, if you look at it from a rocket perspective, and you've got a countdown from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and then all of a sudden at 0, the rocket launches. So if a light switch was turned, and that's what created the problems within the economy, as you turn the switch back, the economy starts to recover. We start to see people coming back into restaurants, back into hotels, back into airlines and traveling. I have several friends that work within the hospitality business, and they're either pilots or they work within resorts, and they're anticipating now that they may not have where they're going to open up the resort now until July 1. So that's certainly more of a U as opposed to a V recovery. And then when they do open up, it's not like people are just going to start booking rooms and coming back into the property all of a sudden, because you have all the issues that we're still going to be concerned about with whether or not you're going to have the ability to get infected. How are they disinfecting the rooms? Are they taking care of the restaurants? Do you really step onto an airplane? Are they going to have, what's that going to look like? Do you want to go into a terminal? So once we start getting people moving again, then we'll have an opportunity to see where we're going to go as far as, absolute recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Tom, how long have you been in the mortgage industry? Jim, I'm sorry, Jim, how long have you been in the mortgage industry?
Started in 1993.
1993. And where did you learn about mortgages? Did you take a class in high school or college about mortgages?
Actually, I did not. I don't know that most people that fall into the mortgage business do so. I was actually running jewelry stores back in 91 and 92, and was exhausted at the end of Christmas, was wondering what it is that I could possibly do where there would be an opportunity to make more money. And I reached out to someone that said, hey, you work within banking. Where do people make money? And he goes, a lot of people make very good money in the mortgage business. I'm really? He's like, yeah. So tell me a little bit about it. He told me about it. I started reaching out to some companies. I actually landed my first job with the largest savings bank in the country at the time, which was Savings of America. And in order to actually land a position with them, you had to give a 20-page presentation, single spaced, and you had to do it verbatim. And if you weren't able to do that, they kicked you out. And I passed the test out in California and have been in the business ever since.
Wow. Okay, but there's no formal education on mortgages in the United States.
There really isn't. No.
Really?
There's
But
not.
almost everybody in the U.S. has a mortage, right? But there's no
Everybody
education.
has one, but they don't. There's
Okay.
not
School
specific
of hard
training.
knocks. It is
Roberto, in Italy, do you guys have mortgages over in Italy?
Yes, we do.
Do you have
We-
classes you take in
electricity.
high school? Do you have classes
No.
you take in high school
No,
or college on mortgages?
no.
No.
Um,
Okay. Man, amazing. Okay, Reina, Malaysia. We'll go to Malaysia. Okay,
Yeah.
you guys have mortgages over in Malaysia?
Yes, definitely. Why not?
Okay, did you take a class in high school on mortgages?
No.
How about college?
Actually, no. No, definitely. There is no such a. I think that is the problem of the regular education system. Like example, we are not market oriented. So many educations that with these skills and knowledge can make money, you can survive. But example, education and industry, there are everywhere around the world that we don't have any engagement with a real ecosystem.
Okay. All right, Jim, I'm going to put
I will say this.
Yeah.
One of the differences between 1993 and what took place with Dodd-Frank was that if you want to operate as a mortgage broker and you want to operate as a lender, you do have to follow through with the licensing requirements of the NMLS, which there is an education process with that we did not have when we first started. So you do have to take over 20 hours worth of classwork. You do have to pass a test. The test is not the easiest test to pass now. And it's also followed up with a requirement of continuing education every year in order to keep your license in effect.
Yeah, that's to become a mortgage broker. But just what about the general public? Just learning about mortgages. Why is it that we do not offer classes in mortgages in the United States of America, Jim?
From a financial literacy perspective. Well,
from a financial fitness perspective.
With a lot of first-time home buyer programs, we do require people to do a class. I'll say that it's not necessarily the most stringent of classes in which to take, but it does at least give some education as to what you should be concerned about when you buy a home, the costs associated with a mortgage, the fact that a mortgage itself is not just the principal and interest payment. You have to take into consideration your property taxes, your insurance, the fact that you are going to have expenses associated with the house, the cost associated with obtaining a mortgage. So many people are not aware of the fact that the closing costs can in some cases be upwards of 3 to 4% of the total mortgage amount that you have to have in addition to the amount that's going to be required for a down payment. So, and then following that, what's a good debt to income ratio? Meaning, if you have for every $1,000 that you have a month that's coming into your house, what's the safest level that you can have going out of it? Is it 28%? Is it 36%? Is it 45%? We all know that if you want to have money in savings, you can't max yourself out from your indebtedness perspective. You have to make sure that you are leaving money set aside for that. But most people, as we all know, want to maximize the amount of house that they have in an effort so that they can get in and really enjoy it without giving a lot of consideration to the fact what happens if you have a situation like COVID? What happens if you do have to go more than 14 days without a check? What is that going to put you into as far as a situation? What we're finding out is it impacts a lot of people, and they're not very, they're not prepared for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the thing is, this just caught a lot of people off guard. It sounds like, Jim.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, it caught everyone, the whole world off guard. I think what we need to do is take a look at some of the things we can do that can help everyone as a community, right? So, we're all smart people. We know that we're going to have to work not just for the U.S., but for the whole world. And so we need to take a look at some of the things that we can do to protect ourselves individually, as including wearing masks when we go out into the public, but some other things. And you had mentioned something like the vaccine. I don't foresee a proper vaccine coming in the future based, the near future, based on some of the conversations we have with some of the doctors that have been on our show, which is kind of disappointing. But they're putting a lot of money, investing a lot of money into vaccines, but personally, I don't want a vaccine stuck into me that they just discovered today that they haven't tested.
Mhm.
yet. And we already know there's 3 strains of viruses that have already popped its head out since this started. I foresee testing being probably one of the most prominent ways to re-enter. I know the White House is testing daily so that they can go to work. So I hope that we implement that moving forward, because Nick has said that from day one. We're going to have to become COVID certified, or he called it COVID certified. I think virus certified or immunity certified. That our immunities just need to be able to fight any virus that comes out there.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Terry Rushton, a CPA, has just joined us
Hi, Terry.
from Salt Lake. Terry, your sound,
Why is Terry? Oh, let's see.
your
He's
mic.
going to have
Oh,
to.
your mic is on mute.
Okay, it's probably working now.
Okay, it is working now. Yes, good to have you. Okay, Terry's a CPA in Salt Lake. Introduced you to Kim and Raleigh. Tom is actually in Sanford, North Carolina. He's an attorney there. Roberto is an attorney in Rome, Italy, and Jim is a mortgage broker in Jupiter, Florida. So, Terry, tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do?
My focus is, and since your conversation is really about COVID and the economic impacts of COVID, I'm really talking about maybe a recovery strategy more than a coping strategy. At some point, business is going to come back. People are going to start making profits again, and one of the best ways to survive that process is to pay as little tax as possible. And I've spent the last 8 years of my career managing small pension plans, and it's a niche concept. It's called 412(e)(3), which is very useful for particularly dentists, specialty doctors that are in their own practice, or any individual business person that has the economics that are similar to those kinds of businesses. It allows an individual, and probably the sweet spot is 50 years plus, within 10 to 15 years of retirement, and an individual with a little bit of planning and really minimal expense can put away anywhere from $100,000 to as much as $400,000 a year personally, and get a full tax deduction for it, and save taxes so they don't have to pay the feds. And that's usually good news for most people.
Yeah. Now, if you put money away in your retirement plan, as opposed to Jim was saying that everybody's trying to get the biggest house possible, what's a better retirement plan? The biggest house possible, or putting money away in your retirement plan?
It depends on what your individual objectives are going to be. The first thing you want to do is you want to look at your individual cash flow, and you want to decide for yourself, okay, how much could I put away? How much could I afford to put into a retirement plan, for instance? Take your income, basically, and deduct from that your living expenses. And then that gives you an approximate figure that you could afford to set aside for future retirement. Once you've identified that decision, then the next thing to do is to figure out, okay, where do I want to put this money, and how much is it going to cost me? There is these plans particularly are called 412(e)(3 is the IRS code section. And they allow for a very simplified plan. It's basically funded by fully guaranteed investment products that are issued by major life insurance companies, either life insurance cash values or fixed annuity cash values. And in the current marketplace, their guarantees are more like approximately 1%, which doesn't sound wonderful, but the lower the guarantee, the higher the contribution can be. Mm-hmm. So the good news is you got a low guarantee, you're using a low assumption interest rate, which means you can put even more into the pension plan for yourself and your family. and minimize the costs that are going to the other employees.
Mhm. Yeah. Now, Tom was telling me that people don't like talking to CPAs because you always send them bills. Is that right, Tom? Or are you saying
I
about
don't recall
CPAs?
saying that, Nick.
Or you're saying that your clients don't like talking to CPAs because
Nick,
they charge fees all the time? What?
Yeah.
no, Nick, you got that wrong.
What
Attorneys.
is it? Oh,
Attorneys.
attorneys who charge
Yeah.
fees all the time.
Attorneys. Yeah. Who's your favorite names? Who's your favorite friends?
Oh, our friends are Bill and Sue. Yeah, Roberto knows that. You know, who's your best
Hey,
friend? Bill and Sue.
Terry, if you're, are you the one are you just advising the clients about this? Or are you actually the one that presents them with these products to participate in?
We have a team. Nick is one of the major pieces of this. His partner is a CFP. My job really is designing the plans from the beginning, creating an initial proposal, and then administering the plans once that they have actually been implemented. Now, one of the keys here is typically when people think of pension plans, they're thinking of either the big traditional plans, the railroads, the GM, General Motors, and so forth. We're talking about a very small niche. We have one plan on our books that probably has 400 employees in it. We have most of our plans are 10 to 20 employees, or even just a husband and a wife that are doing it just for themselves and don't even have to worry about employees. But they can still take advantage of this. Our fees to set the plan up are $1,500 a year, and then there's an initial $1,500. And then there's an annual administration fee of another $1,500 that pays for all of the IRS, Department of Labor reporting, and so forth. So for a fairly minimal fee structure, we can provide a vehicle that enables them to put anywhere from $100,000 to $400,000 away every year on a tax-deferred basis.
Yeah, and you can do it all on the internet, right, Terry?
We do it all on the internet. Just this kind of a scenario. We work very closely with the individual business owners, CPAs or accountants or whatever. Many of the people in the insurance business hate CPAs because they're always saying no to everything. We've learned a long time ago that we get the CPA on board quickly and get it explained to him or her, and they're usually our biggest selling tool because they're going to say, this is exactly what you need, write the check, quit hemming and hawing about it. So we'll do a series of go-to meetings like this, one with the advisor, next one with the CPA, usually the third is with the actual client. And by then, we've had a chance to fully explain the concept, talk about whatever risks are involved, and talk about the fee structures so that everybody is fully advised of what the realistic nature of these plans are. But they're dirt cheap compared to many retirement plans, and especially compared to how much money an individual can put away.
Yes, Rana has joined us from Malaysia. Rana, do they have pension plans in Malaysia?
Yes, we have. We have a pension plan and this kind of a scheme, what you are talking about the mortgage plan, about the pension plan for the Malaysian people, government have. And at present, in that situations, actually, government also trying to giving support to the local peoples from the pension schemes and this kind of things. They're trying to adjust with their economy because every day the lockdown, they're losing $2.41 billion ringgit. Sorry. So in that situation, they're trying to adjust with this kind of money, government pension schemes and different kind of things. They are trying to adjust in that situation. But I have some others things. Maybe in any of the situation we can learn because I know many countries still they do not adapt with this kind of policy. So you people here in this community, you are very experienced. maybe according to Mr. Nick, we can arrange any training session or something like that, how the developing nations, they can adopt with this kind of pension schemes and the mortgage policy and the many things, health insurance and many things. There are many countries in the developing nations. Let's say I'm talking about Bangladesh, I'm talking about Myanmar and these countries. So I'm also a researcher. I want to do a good understanding on these things. Maybe there is a good opportunity. That's the things I'm talking, that maybe we can make a very good ecosystems and we can share the business things. But yes, Malaysia, they are implemented. They are implemented these things.
Rama, I mean, you're in your country. I mean, in Europe, most of the pension system and is basically run by the state. Then you can have basically some pension schemes which are added to the system run by the state. Is it like this also in your country, or?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, Terry,
is the state running everything also in your country, or
Terry, is your pension run by the state in the United States, or how are the pensions run? Are they run by the states or the government?
Neither. There are, of course, government, state-sponsored pensions. There's some of the very, very large ones. The federal pension system is huge. But what we're talking about are individual pensions created by specific small businesses or professionals. Engineers work, architects work. One of our first clients when we opened the doors was two guys that were movie producers, or not producers, but distributors. And they were actually able to put away over a 3-year period, probably something like $500,000 each. And then they closed it down and rolled it into an IRA, and they're living off of it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jim, in the mortgage industry, does people's pensions count when you apply for a mortgage? Do mortgage brokers look at people's pension plans?
Oh, absolutely. Sure. I mean, anything that we're looking for is just a documentable income stream. So whether it's coming from a pension, whether it's Social Security, whether it's payroll, whether it's self-employment earnings, anything that we can count on in order to just get a realistic understanding of how much money you have coming into the house each month helps us in determining how much we can lend you on a consistent basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the mortgage rates are really low right now, too.
Mortgage rates are incredible.
Yeah. So maybe it's a good time to actually go borrow money. Do you do commercial lending as well as residential lending?
I predominantly specialize in residential.
Residential. Now, are you limited to the state of Florida?
I am. That's where I hold my license. There are other mortgage brokers that do extend beyond that point. However, what I've typically always found is that you're better off as an expert in your own backyard as opposed to trying to know the intricacies of how to manage the costs in Georgia and everywhere else. So,
okay. Now in Florida, when the 2008 crash took place, Florida properties, like especially in Lee County, Florida, and a lot of places in Florida, the real estate market just hit the skids there. Do you think that's going to happen again, where the real estate values just crashed in Florida?
Well, the huge difference between real estate in 2008 and real estate in 2020 is that in 2006, 7, and 8, if you wanted a mortgage, you could get a mortgage. You could walk in the door, tell me how much how much the house was you were looking to purchase. We had stated incomes. We had no document incomes. We had no income, no asset. The Ninja loan that was popular at the time. So we all believed, Alan Greenspan as well, that if you got yourself in trouble with property appreciation as it was going to get yourself out and you could sell, you could refinance, you could do whatever it was that you needed to. But as we didn't have a lot of real information as to who it was that you were, if you couldn't pay, you couldn't pay. And as interest rates started to rise and home values started to decline, more people just decided that, you know what, the value that they thought they had in housing really wasn't there, and people started to walk. Today, we've never had greater information on the borrowing public that we have than we do. the majority of all loans have been fully documented. We know exactly how much money you have coming in. We know exactly how much money you have that's going out the door. And if you take that into consideration, along with the fact that close to 50% of the homes that are out there today are actually without mortgages, like you, Nick, if you get into trouble, you don't have to sell at a low price. You can sit there and hold out. So, where property values continue to escalate, even though we've seen housing activity take a backseat in the last couple of weeks, we still haven't seen a lot of fire sale prices. People aren't really looking to get out. And the other thing that we all know is on a family-to-family basis, life still happens. If you need to have a house to live in, you're going to look to be buying a house in June if you were looking to buy a house in February. That's not going to stop. One of the things that we all experience at the end of May and the beginning of May is that high school graduations, college graduations. You have people that are exiting the house, they're going off to school. You have people that are coming out of college and the workforce and that need housing. They're not all going back to live with mom and dad. And these people will continue to create needs within housing that we're going to see regardless of whether or not we have the virus. So, we're not anticipating that home values are going to come down. Matter of fact, we're actually anticipating that they're going to at least remain somewhat consistent. And as we've seen in many areas of the country, home prices have been pretty healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add to some of that. One of the things I learned, and we actually had an economic professor come on and share this as well, is that the construction businesses are actually still out there building a lot of new properties and homes, and that has not stopped through this process. But it was a very, they considered that more of a safer environment for people to go to work, but they encouraged it because they said that would keep cash flow going in our economic situation here. So I was real happy to hear that the construction businesses were still flourishing. I hope that it doesn't come to a screeching halt after they get all of these houses finished, that because people are graduating, they don't have jobs just yet to go into until this is lifted. I hope that somehow or another we manage to keep all of that connected and still going. What do you see happening, Jim? With because I know a lot of construction is still going.
Well, there's a lot of construction that's taking place. And one of the things that we're looking at is where are we seeing the greater amount of construction? If you look at many areas of South Florida, a lot of the home prices where homes are being built are actually within that jumbo level. So we're looking at prices that are going to exceed loan amount for the most part, $504,000 that we're looking at. Or $510,000. I'm questioning how that's going to continue because a lot of those lenders have backed out the mortgage space and the jumbo space. Conventional mortgages are still going to continue strong. So in other areas of the country where home prices aren't as healthy as they are on the east and the west coast of California and Florida and other parts, we should still continue to do pretty well. There is a lot of money that's still available within those price points, but we are also seeing that you do have minimum FICO score requirements are increasing. We do want to make sure that people do have a job when we get a close. We want to make sure that they're not being impacted negatively, even on refinance transactions where we know that people have been in the house. We are checking to make sure that they still have a job within 10 days of closing, within 3 days of closing, the day of closing. Because this is a very fluid movement. We've seen a lot of banks that have pulled out just before someone is getting ready to close, if they're looking for home equity lines of credit or a second mortgage in conjunction to make a transaction work. There's just a lot of risk that's associated with some of these transactions that we don't know. Mm-hmm. We just don't know.
Are there ways that, and that this is always a concern, I guess, at any time, but are there any scams out there going on that people need to be aware of when they're going for a mortgage? Some things that they could look for to avoid some of the scams that might start rising out of the ashes here?
With respects to?
Just looking for a mortgage company. Are there any, things going on out there in the lending industry that they need to be aware of?
I don't know if the things that so much that they need to be aware of as much as the fact that if it's been a while since someone has obtained a mortgage, one of the things that they might be surprised about is the fact that more documentation is going to be requested of you. And it's going to be, if you're giving us documentation, you're not going to close for 60 days. and you think that once you've given the first batch of information that might be sufficient. That's not going to be the case. We're going to want to see the most recent pay stub just in advance of closing, not the one that was most recent in advance of the application. And you need to make sure that your human resources department or your manager is going to be contacted in advance of closing to make sure that this is going to take place. We're not trying to be arduous, but we just want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves in the event that once you go to closing that you're not going to skip your first mortgage payment. One of the things right now, if someone does skip their first mortgage payment and that mortgage is attempted to be sold, it's going to carry a 7-point haircut. So on a $100,000 mortgage, in order to unload that mortgage, now you just can't unload it at 100. Now you're going to have to unload it at 93,000. Where's that $7,000 coming from? It's coming from somebody, and we just don't want it to be us. So,
Right.
If you go back into 2008 and 2009, it used to be that if you were to take $1 million worth of mortgages to market, you could expect to walk out with $2 million. And then you advance a few weeks, and now you're walking out with $1 million. You advance another few weeks, and now you're walking out. You just hope to unload them at the pool. And then 2 weeks later, you go up with $1 million worth of mortgages, and they're going to give you $980,000. So now you just lost 2%. And you can't continue to do that consistently. And that's why you have the mortgage implode meter, which developed, back in the day where, all of a sudden, just like you were showing the COVID cases that were starting to go along the way, that was happening with mortgage companies back then, right? And, so everybody's looking, is my company going to be on the list next? And it was absolute havoc. We're not going to see that now, but we wanted to make sure that we're doing all that we can in order to protect ourselves to make sure that doesn't happen. So what are the types of borrowing groups that could be impacted? If you have somebody that's putting down 10, 15, 20, 30, 40%, you're going to find that credit availability is still pretty widespread. But if you're in the situation where you're still wanting to do a first-time home buyer loan or an FHA mortgage where you're putting down 3% or 3.5%, the credit requirements for that are increasing, where it used to be you could get a loan if you had a 580 FICO score. Now a lot of lenders are only going to allow you to get that type of mortgage product if your FICO score is at 680 or above. Because there's more risk associated with the lower FICO scores. You want to make sure that you're not going to fall into that bucket to where you can't make your mortgage payment, that you have shown a little more responsible, behavior with managing your credit. You're not over indebted. We're not going to give you a loan if your debt to income level exceeds 45%, in many respects now, where you might have been able to have gotten by a 48% or 49%, provided that automated underwriting would bless that loan. So, I think that's probably more of what people need to understand is that, if you were living on the outer fringes of, credit risk, you might have a more difficult time trying to get a mortgage today than what you would have in February or March.
Wow. So the restrictions are going to get tougher rather than more lenient, you think? I wish it would go the other way so that people could move again, right? I think sometimes we get ourselves into a little bit of a pickle when times like this happens. Just people in general, that having a little bit of flexibility could and relax the situation just a little bit could help free up the problem that we're going to have. But I think we're just going to have to learn to live together through this and build together again. What are your thoughts, Roberto? What's it like over there in Italy?
Yeah, Roberto, do they have FICO scores over in Italy?
FICO scores.
Thank God, no. But usually, if you need money from the bank, you have to provide guarantees, and guarantees are usually double as much as you get from the bank. It's basically the way the system in Italy works is that if you have the money, or assets, you can get money. If you don't have money, you don't get money. Basically, it's very no, but
I have one question.
But maybe a little more concrete. Basically, you have to think that our loan industry is completely different from yours. Italian banks have been public, means state-owned until 92, 93. And basically the state has, until then, was controlling everything, including the terms and conditions of the law. Now there is some kind of condition, but competition is more or less only on the interest rate, which are around something in the 1%, only 0.something%.
Okay.
And usually banks are very, very conservative.
Mhm.
I mean,
Right.
we have also a huge framework of, of rules coming from the European Union, where basically there are hundreds and hundreds of requirement checks, processes, and things like that. But not the easiest thing to do, but in principle, for example, what Jim was saying before, you try to get 100% of the value of your house. That's not the case anymore. Best case scenario, you can get 75% of the price of the property you're going to acquire, financed by the bank, but the rest you have to put your own equity.
Okay. Right. Right.
And
Right.
in any case, house will be. I mean, and in any case, the estate will be mortgage. Will be of course be in a guarantee or a bank guarantee to the repayment of the loan.
Reina, how does it work over in Malaysia?
For this mortgage and this kind of things.
Yes.
Okay, basically, yes, government, they have the specific law, rules, and policy. On the other hand, corporate, they are actually managing this kind of business. Especially, we have many China-based construction companies, and they're like Sime Darby, Sunway groups, many big group of companies. And I say their infrastructure is very good. But issue is that there is a policy, like example, there is a mortgage loan for Bhumiputra. Bhumiputra is a Malaysian local people. They have different policy. Then there is a Chinese and Indian people. They have different policy, and policy those who are foreigner, they have different policy. There are some sort of differentiations in that mortgage loan and this kind of thing. Like if you are a Bhumiputra, like in a Malaysian people, then example, you have to pay in different mode. If you are a Chinese and Indian, then your payment is different. But if you are a foreigners, like those who come from abroad and they are buying properties in Malaysia, they have in different things. But if I compare, even though like South Asian market and the Malaysian market, in the construction industry, Malaysian market is more stable and good. Even though, example, Indian peoples and the Pakistani peoples and the Bangladeshi peoples, they want to buy their property in Malaysia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Rama, you're in Malaysia. You don't have Islamic finance or Islamic.
Yes, true. Islamic finance, they are heavily used. Islamic finance. Let's
Well,
say.
I mean, I know that. I mean, I'm kind of like the idea of Islamic finance, where it's in principle it's not everything about the riba, which the interest.
Yes.
Somehow the way I see Islamic finance, some of the structures are a little bit more ethically and more driven to the consumer than also to the borrower as to the lender.
Exactly. Like example for interest rate for Islamic finance, interest rate, there is no fixed interest rate. It's based on your profit. Yes, actually there is some sort of mechanism, but definitely you do not have too much of pressures like other international banks do. But Islamic finance is more reasonable and more flexible. And here's,
I mean, sorry for interrupting you, but one of the things which Jim said before, which I found it's kind of crazy from a European point of view, that you think that if you get a loan, you pay the amount, don't pay more than the actual price you agreed. Because I mean, basically, if you have to pay interest, it's obvious that interest will basically add to the capital and you will pay more. But in this, I mean, in the case of European or Western kind of loans, with flexible rates and so on, the variable rates, you really don't know how much you're going to pay. But in a muharaba or in another kind of structure, from Islamic finance, since you don't pay nominally interest rate, you basically know when you buy a house how much more you're going to pay for the use of the capital since from the beginning. Because
Yes.
as far as I understood, the way it works is the bank buys your house and you rebuy from the bank the house with another value of
Yes.
X, Y, and Z.
Yes, basically it depends. Like if you utilize, let's say, Islamic Development Bank finance, okay, for your housing development or your project development, then at present, the traditional banking policy, you have lot of pressures on your interest rate and many more things. This is not like that. This is something relaxed. Let's say in that COVID-19 situations, they are more. That's the things from the beginning. I said that yes, there are many good things we can utilize it. So Islamic finance is something like that, like for your housing project and many other projects, you can utilize it. And here actually pressure is not too much, and everything is negotiable and understandable. And it's all about actually for projects you have to build up a project. It's all about a feasibility study. So based on that, they create. And if this COVID-19 and this kind of situation come,